to Built with Solid Gold. I'm your host, Rich Miller. Today's episode is one for the playbook. We're sitting down with Chris Calandra, certified financial planner and founder of Elliott Wealth Management Services, to break down his 7 wealth building rules for real estate investors. Chris has over 30 years of experience helping families, business owners, and investors turn smart decisions into long-term success. He's also the host of the Simply Financial podcast, so he knows how to explain financial strategy in a way that actually makes sense. Whether you're early in your journey or looking to take your portfolio to the next level, this episode is packed with insight. Let's jump in.
From flips to rentals, roofs to floors, they're building it all with windows and doors. Developments rise, the vision takes hold. This is Built with Solid Gold. Led by Rich Miller with deals that shine, and Steve Gold turning plans into profit lines. Takis brings quotes that seal the deal, while the whole team keeps the rooftops real. It's real estate hustle and entrepreneurial grind, building bold futures one project at a time. So turn it up, let the stories unfold. You're listening to Built with Solid Gold.
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
How are we doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for being here, man.
We scheduled this a while ago, so I've been really looking forward to it. So I'm
the mental preparation has been there for.
Oh yeah, I've been studying, preparing. Waking up at night worried.
And like cold sweats.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I think it's great because off camera, you and I have had some great conversations about a wide variety of topics. So to actually do this as part of your wonderful podcast, it's a good change of pace.
Today I'm just trying to learn a little bit from you on the podcast world, since you've done numerous podcasts in your career. And you got into the financial advising world, which I think a lot of people wonder, how does that even happen? So can you take us back and how you even started into this being a financial advisor?
Yeah, I'm a financial advisor. My designation is a certified financial planner, which is a prominent designation in the field. I'm lucky, Rich, compared to some people, because I knew early on what I wanted to do, which was to deal with investments and money and wealth management, even tracing back to high school. Why that happened so early, I'm not really sure exactly, but I had an inkling at an early age. And in college, it became clear that that's the path I wanted to go on. And I say I'm lucky because it's easy to seem motivated when you know what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do, what are you going to be motivated for? So in college, I knew this, what I wanted to do. And coming out of college, I landed my first job with a Wall Street firm and entered into their training program. And then my career kicked off from there. And it's really the only thing I've ever done. I'm 54. I'll be 55 in a little bit. So this has been the career for my life.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love that. Just to discover your passion early in life, I think for anyone, that's a remarkable thing.
Yes, and it's been good to me. It's enabled me to build wealth myself. It's a very financially rewarding career. It also lends itself in many instances to a good work-life balance. You do have control compared to some other industries, control your time, and that allowed me, I think, to be a good husband, although if my wife is listening, she may argue with that, but a good parent, coaching my kids and being around for important events. So it's a career that's been very good to me, and I'm very appreciative.
So from now the 30 plus years of experience, you've essentially found 7 wealth building strategies or rules that you kind of outline for our investors and real estate agents, correct?
Yeah, and the origin of this, Rich, is I've been on a quest from an early age to be rich. I know that sounds crass, but it was something that drove me for most of my life. And so I've always been on this journey trying to learn about money and wealth and how to become rich and things like that. Part of that's the self-help genre of books and podcasts and things like that. And what I learned relatively early on is one of the components of people that I had met that were wealthy had some part of their wealth created and maintained in real estate.
Hmm.
So being a financial planner, there's a concentration on liquid assets, stock, bonds, 401ks, IRAs, and the like. And they are, I think, essential as part of a wealth building plan. But the complement to that often is real estate, starting with a home, could be added on to with a second home. But then a lot of people build wealth through investing in real estate. It could take many different forms. I don't think there's one silver bullet or a single way to be successful. But for people that have accumulated wealth, real estate's usually a part of the equation. And I adopted that early on. I invested at a relatively early age in real estate because, again, my goal was to be rich. So I wanted to do the paper assets, the stocks, bonds, all that other stuff, but also work into my allocation of money that I wanted to deploy into assets is to have real estate. So I've had a nice little experience over the years in a variety of different real estate ventures, and it's been helpful on my own personal journey to accumulate wealth. So marrying being a financial planner with being a real estate investor, I considered some guidelines, some rules, if you will, for real estate investors to follow to help them be successful and to help them be successful quicker and maybe avoid some missteps.
Yeah, it's funny because Gold, you've talked about a lot of your experience where the stock market, your friends being brokers, this and that, and coming into it. So we're really going to kind of marry this aspect.
Yeah, no, it's having the financial background and also, having the real estate, experience is huge, right? Because you need the money to buy the real estate. And if everything's working for you, you hear that often, right? If go talk to a financial advisor, they're like, you want to be well-rounded, right? Diversified is the word, right?
Yes.
What's diversification? Diversification is, you would know better than me, but mutual funds, stocks, IRAs, real estate, etc. So yeah, no, I mean it's a very, you see it sometimes. Like for me, I went into it as a real estate guy, and now I diversify. I wanted to work on Wall Street. I never got the chance because I left New Jersey. That was what I was gonna do.
Still time, Gold. You're a young man.
What's funny is hey sweetheart, you see I got my ring on today. For you.
Bonus points.
Yeah, she told me I wasn't wearing my ring. I'm not single. Anyhow, I've joked with my wife telling her that I'm going to go back and get a job on Wall Street.
There you go.
Just to finish what I didn't get to start. But that's a whole different...
Maybe after this podcast.
There you go.
You never know.
I might interview him afterwards.
So let's jump into this then. Rule number 1 in your 7 rules here is to set clear goals. And as stated by Napoleon Hill, what the mind can conceive, it can achieve.
I'm glad you used that quote, one of my favorite quotes. In any endeavor, I think it's important to establish goals, what you want to accomplish. And the quote illustrates that perfectly. So if you're investing in real estate or you want to begin investing in real estate, establishing some goals, I think, is important. Granted, goals will change and evolve over time because sometimes the journey in investing and real estate investing in particular, there's ups and downs, you learn things, but you want to establish some goals. For example, how many properties do you want to own? What type of properties do you want to own? You guys know as well as I do, there's almost an endless way that you can get involved in real estate investing. So establishing some goals as to what you want to accomplish. I've met people that have said they want to own 1,000 properties. Great, more power to you. That's pretty ambitious.
Sure.
That's not a goal that I ever had. And my goal was always to supplement my wealth building activities by building out a small portfolio of real estate. So establishing goals is very important. And let me add, if any of your listeners and viewers have heard about goal setting, and oftentimes I think the idea that you set an audacious long-term goal is very prominent, and I think that's good. So I want to have $1 million of real estate as an example. That's all well and good, but I think too often it's underreported, the idea that you need short-term and medium-term goals to marry with the long-term goals. Because if you have an audacious long-term goal, but you don't break it down to its bite size, what you need to do today over the next couple of months in the short term, it could be, in my experience, in my opinion, a little easier to divert off the path you want to go down. Because if you have no properties and you want to get to 100, that's pretty overwhelming, or can be overwhelming.
Sure.
So to start with is, I want to get my first property in the next 6 months, as an example. So have good long-term goals, but break down into short-term goals, things that are more actionable that you could do today to get you on your journey and keep you on the path to your ultimate larger or more audacious goal.
So I know you use a nice acronym, SMART.
Yes.
That framework. Do you mind diving into that a little bit more? Stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound.
Yeah, so viewers could look up SMART goals, but it's really a methodology to establish goals. One of the key elements of this is to have quantifiable goals. So a goal that says, I want to be rich by being a real estate investor is not quantifiable. It's not measurable, because your version of rich and your version of rich might be different, and probably is different than me. So you want to establish some goals, but use the SMART methodology to help you establish goals that'll increase your likelihood of success. Again, as an example, quantifiable, how many properties you want to own, or how much money you want to have in investment properties. It could even be how many hours a week you would devote to the activity. Because if, for example, you're working full time, you might have 10 hours a week to devote to finding, investing, managing, even just learning about investment real estate. That's an okay goal too. But the SMART methodology just makes it simple to establish goals, and using a system to make sure you're establishing goals that'll help you.
Sure. And in gold, we were talking about it yesterday, some of the Roomster goals you had for, expanding the platform, maybe bringing another house on. When you're setting your goal specifically for your business, what strategies are you utilizing to kind of direct your empire?
I agree with everything Chris is saying, and this may sound a little bit over the top, but like, I'm wired for that. Like, it's in me. Everything he said is in me. Like, I could, and almost too much, to the point where I do write a lot of things down, but like, I have like this space in my head where it just gets filed, and nobody has to ask me. Nobody needs to. If you called me in the morning and said, what do you need to do today? What do you need to do tomorrow? What do you need to do next day? What do you need? What are your longer term goals? Like, I could sit there and just give them to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to. And that's just me, obviously being seasoned, right? But even at a earlier age, I think the biggest issue is that you're kind of a little bit all over the place, right? Because you're not mature, right?
Yes.
So like, for me, I was just this guy who had confidence out the ass, common sense out the ass, and I just kind of went with what I, in my mind, what I can do. It wasn't necessarily the right way, because I didn't really have. I should have been smarter at that time, and I wish I was.
Yeah.
But at this stage, I think, you got to be super organized. You can't be lazy. You got to be motivated. I always have a saying that, don't talk about it, be about it, right?
Right.
Like, not everybody has to be this hardwired to do this, but like, it's, you could sit down, look yourself in the mirror, and with you, I know the first property you bought, not the first, but the first one, and I was telling you the whole time, like, look, man, just rent it. Just rent it. It's your first one. I'm telling you, it's like a baby. It's your first one. You're gonna learn from it. You're gonna feel a confidence from it. It's gonna make you money. And this one is gonna be the first one, and this is the next one, and third. You got to start somewhere, right? And having these long-term goals of grandeur is great, because that says, where you're at. But like, you got to be realistic within. You have to have a plan, and you have to be smart. And the last thing I'm going to say on this little tidbit is, and I'm sure you'll agree, is that once you think you have it figured out, you don't have it figured out because you're always figuring it out. It never ends. The figuring out from your level to my level, it never ends. It never ends. But that's what gets you to where you want to be. Because if it ends, you're done, right? So, you know, it's a process that you just have to keep at.
Which even leads us into our rule number 2, nicely actually. Preparation is key. Because a great quote also from you, Chris, is a fool and his money are soon parted.
Yes. To be clear, that's not my quote. It's a quote that you saw me post someplace.
Yes.
So,
but I love that you utilize it.
yeah,
And,
I think in the real estate investing space, and you guys are immersed in it, so I think you'll agree, is it's shark-infested waters. I mean, there are a lot of good people in the space, but it is a hard-nosed, competitive space, and there are lots of deals and things you could get involved in. You will get separated from your money. So one of the defenses against that, whether you're starting out or somewhat experienced, or even if you're very experienced, is to be prepared. And there's lots of ways you could be prepared. There is this podcast, which is great. There are lots of other podcasts on this subject, which are valuable. There's books, there's websites on Facebook and the like, where you could learn and stay up to date on best practices, laws, regulations, ideas, investing strategies, including financing strategies. So you want to be prepared when you are investing in real estate. And this is very important because if you're going to be successful, being prepared is a key ingredient to that, especially in a space like real estate where there is a lot of hard-nosed business activity that you don't want to end up on the wrong side of a deal. And that can happen. It's happened to everybody. I've been in real estate deals that had not worked out. I don't think anybody bats 1,000, but by being prepared, doing your homework, learning your craft, you could become a better real estate investor and stack the odds in your favor that you'll be successful and avoid potential pitfalls.
it's funny because Gold brought up my my first flip I was doing, and I'd gone over a year of diagnosing properties, comping properties, understanding, creating a budget, a construction budget, this and that. And I finally went into, I said, okay, I've got a low risk condo situation. It's 650 square feet, you know, where there's not much that can go wrong. So you start budgeting, you start working way through it. And sure enough, like you find out that the AC unit that you budgeted for doesn't fit through the hatch through the roof. So now all of a sudden you have to bring a crane in for an extra $1,000 that you had no idea was going to hit. And you quickly change your plan and you work your way through. But having that education, having that preparation allowed us to properly navigate the situation.
Yeah, a classic example, and I'm in favor of these within reason, is there's lots of real estate investor seminars as part of the options to learn and get prepared. But some people get out, they go to one seminar and they get out of the seminar, and next thing you know, the next week they're buying a property. So I'm not saying that's guaranteed way to lose money, but I would caution strongly against acting that fast. More preparation, more homework, more deliberation is probably required to be successful. Now, somebody could get lucky, but you see a lot of that. People get empowered and so excited in these seminars, which can be very good at amping you up and getting you very enthusiastic. But those people more often than not end up on the wrong end of things.
This episode is brought to you by Roomster, rooms and suites in South Tampa for rent. Whether you're here for a couple of weeks or a few months, enjoy clean, fully updated spaces in prime locations. Book direct and save at roomster.com. That's ROOMSTR.com. Or call 813-318-1289. Which kind of brings us into our next rule number 3. Develop a wealth building plan, because clarity beats complexity, dare I say. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. He's taken another one of my common phrases. I love it.
Yeah. Doing my homework here and there.
Yes. So have a wealth building plan. So you have resources available to you. You have your time, you have your skill set, you have assets, money in the bank, money in an IRA. You have cash flow. You have money coming into your household. You might be working, might have a spouse or partner that's also bringing in income. But having an awareness of what resources you have to devote to wealth building, and then to determine how you want to deploy those resources. So as an example, let's say you make, I'm making up a number, but let's say you make $100,000 and you have $20,000 a year that you could devote to wealth building, meaning it's money that you don't need to spend, you don't need it to your bills. Well, are you going to take all of that $20,000 and try and do an investment deal with that money? Or will some of that go into your 401k, maybe so that you can get the company match? Or maybe you have some consumer debt, some credit cards, and maybe it'd be worthwhile to take some or even a lot of that money to pay down your 12, 15, 18% credit card debt. So you have the resource of the $100,000 of income. You figure out that there's approximately $20,000 you could use to build wealth. Then how much of that $20,000 goes to the different important initiatives you have? And this goes back to the goal setting, because if you have goals, if the goal is to reduce consumer debt, then maybe you take a big chunk of that money and go after that. If your primary goal is to get your first investment property or even your fourth, then maybe most of that $20,000 gets thrown at that important goal. So have a wealth building plan. And the idea here is purposefulness. I find over the course of my career, whether you're talking about real estate investors or just building wealth in general, a lot of people lack purpose and sort of stuff is happening to them as opposed to them being offensive and proactive is, here's what I want my money to do. Here's what I want to do with my money. And again, this relates to goal setting, but to have a purpose and not just accidentally figure out how you end up spending or deploying your money. So you want to have a plan. Now, this isn't surprising. Certified financial planner. I think you should plan just about everything. I'm so geeky. But you definitely want to have a wealth building plan, how you want to divide up your money and your cash flow, where the money should go. And one final note is it's going to change over time because you might have a goal going back to that paying down consumer debt. Well, that probably isn't a long-term goal because once you settle that debt, hopefully don't create any new consumer debt, then you move on to something else. Or if the goal is to get your first property, you might move on to a second property or improving the first property or paying down the debt of the first property. So these are going to be fluid. You're going to have an evolution. And going back to what Gold was saying, that's part of the charm of all this, to be on this journey, but it's going to change. You definitely want to have a plan so that you are purposeful.
So when you're creating a net worth statement, is this something that Elliott Wealth can help people do and navigate? What role do they play in this?
Yeah, so the firm that I founded, Elliott Wealth Management Services, is an investment advisory financial planning firm, and we do work with and help clients create and maintain a wealth building plan. We have some powerful software that we can use, but I will say there's nothing wrong with having it in an Excel spreadsheet. I keep mine on an Excel spreadsheet. Now, I also have it on the more bigger version, you know, the tech platform. But there's something about the Excel spreadsheet for me that is so instinctually appealing. Like, I just really like to see it there. So net worth statement, to keep everybody up to speed, is something that I and my team at Elliott Wealth Management are huge proponents of, is basically to keep track of your wealth. So the wealth net worth statement essentially is you list all of your assets one by one: money in the bank, 401k, IRA, college funds, investment property number one, home, whatever. You list all of your assets one by one and you assign a value to them. In the case of real estate, I agree that that's somewhat subjective. I know on my net worth statement, I used a Zillow's estimate. I know it's not perfect, but if I'm not selling the property, it's just something that I could use. It's quick and easy.
Guideline.
Exactly. So you list all of your assets.
It's always less than that.
Yeah.
It's like the price, and you're like, always less.
Yes. So then you add up the total assets you have. And then the next element of this is to list all of your debts that you have, if you have debts. And I'm a big proponent of hopefully getting to debt-free status at an appropriate time. But you would list all of your debts, same thing. The debt could be a mortgage, credit card, student loan, what have you. List all of your debts. So now you have a total amount of your debts. Fancier term is liabilities. And then your net worth is found by subtracting your debts from your assets. That's your net worth. Now, for people like Gold and me and you also that are hard driving A personalities, this is very appealing because it's basically your scorecard.
Mhm.
Think sports. Bill Parcells, former coach of many NFL teams, said, "You are what your record says you are." And if you're trying to build wealth and you're trying to be smart with money, you're trying to get ahead, the net worth statement is the ultimate scorecard. Is how much wealth have you accumulated up to this point? So I do my net worth statement every quarter. We advocate that people don't do it less than a year. Some people want to do it monthly. I think that's okay. It actually doesn't take that much time because if you think about the components, the assets and the liabilities, they don't change that much. Occasionally you'll add an asset, you might add a debt, you might erase a debt, but it doesn't take too long to change those. So for my net worth statement, and I have some complexity in my household, it takes me like 15 minutes a quarter to do my net worth statement. But I could go back, Rich, I could go back, Gold, and see quarter after quarter for these many years how my financial status, my financial security, my wealth building plan has unfolded because I could see how my assets have grown and changed. I could see how my debts went down and were ultimately eliminated. And again, for people, this is very motivational because you could see yourself getting ahead in a very distilled way. There's a lot of noise out there. How much you make, how much you spend, invest here, invest there. You got family considerations. You want to travel, have fun. This just distills everything down to the simplest parts. If you're listening and watching, though, don't be afraid to do this, even if your net worth is not going to be a number that you're particularly proud of. It's just a starting point. But if you do this quarter after quarter or whatever rhythm you want to get into, I think you'll find it very, very appealing because you'll see where your assets are, see where your debts are, and that'll help you with other elements of the rules we've gone through. That'll help you with goal setting. You might say, I want to increase that asset, or I want more of those assets, or I want less of this debt. So it's very motivational. So everyone, I believe, should have a net worth statement, including you two fine gentlemen, assuming you don't have one already.
Yes, I I will say it's funny when we watch, like Nicole and I watch our mortgage go down,
Yeah.
right? And I remember it like we just went over under like 300,000 and like it went from a 3 to a 2. We were like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a really good
Motivational.
moment, you know?
Yeah.
And like, all right, cool.
Mhm.
We're doing.
And it
So,
helps drive to continue to do what you're doing, which is having a wealth building plan, setting goals, being prepared so that you're on a wealth building journey that'll help you get to financial security, increase financial security over time.
exactly. Which I think we alluded to, you know, going through things and whatnot, which comes to rule 4, which Gold loves, building the right team, right?
Yes.
Because apparently this is not an individual sport.
Wealth building is not an individual sport. We all need help. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm a geek. I've spent my entire career looking at money concepts, investment ideas, reading, listening, attending events. I need help. We all need help. You want to build a team that could help you be successful. And so a team is going to be different for everyone, but some examples are having a good CPA, I think is very valuable. Having a financial planner for a lot of people is also valuable. Granted, I am self-serving with that, but I believe we play a key role in helping people be successful with their money. In the realm of real estate, having relationships with one or more quality real estate agents is very important. I found my real estate agent relationships over the years, and I've had many very fruitful ones. It's a great relationship, very important. They're terrific partners. It stretches out to insurance agents, appraisers, inspectors, people in the trades. We talked about being prepared. We talked about the assets or the skills that you have. I cannot fix anything. You know this, Rich. I am not handy at all. If you it's a little bit of a dated joke, but if you open up my toolbox, the yellow pages are in there. Still, yes.
All right.
Yeah. So for me, part of my team was always to have really good contractors, plumbers, electrician, different craftsmen, so that when I had a project or in a property that I had that needed work, I had people that I know and trusted and had a good relationship with that were part of my team that I could go to. And that was important because it complemented an area that I am very weak in. And so you want to build out your team. So if you're a real estate investor already, you probably have one or more parts of this team in place. And I would encourage you to cultivate more teammates and also strengthen the relationships that you have. And if you happen to be someone that's just getting started, is to be conscious of who's on your team and where there's weaknesses that you want to add people that you could trust and can help you on your wealth building journey.
Gold, you've talked about this a lot, building a team and going through it. How have you, through the years, established the right people to be on your team?
I mean, that's a good question, and I'd be lying to you if I told you that I was really it's another thing that over the time of experience you figure these things out, right? You as Chris mentioned, he knows his weaknesses, he knows his strong points, right? So for you use that to say, hey, these are the people that I need to have around me that are good, right? Everything stems back for me from sports, people that can watch this, have known me for a long time. Maybe I wasn't the best teammate when I was younger, but, I've learned over the years, how to become a leader, right? How to become a guy who can, play his position on the team, right? Guys that, and then you get to a point where you figured that out, right? Because that's the next stage, and then now you're building the team, right? So now you're not only, it's not about what you are good at, it's a matter of what that other person is good at, right? And how they incorporate and work with other people that you bring in. So that's one of my most enjoyable parts of my existence now is figuring out how to bring people together, because you don't really. So again, you learn as you go, and it's in our line of work, you don't have the luxury of having recruiters and looking at all these people that have Harvard business degrees and all that, right? Like we don't necessarily, that's not necessarily an option, right? Sure. That would be an easy way to build a team. You'd be like, that's the best guy over there. He's going to get paid $600,000 to start, right? Like, but you don't have that. So I use a lot of sense, right? You can sense the way people are. You can there's little things you can tell by asking people questions that they may not even know you're really trying to get at that.
Yeah.
And you can tell a lot about people from there. I mean, I tell you right now, I'll take a hard worker, a person who gets up early, who has confidence, who works hard, who's played sports their whole life, because typically they realize that, what it takes to win as a team. So like all that is kind of like, you can hone them, right? And make them understand a little bit more about how they need to be. So yeah, no, the team concept is huge. And I always say, being a soccer player, there's 11 guys on the field. You got a goalie, that's his position. Defensive center midfield, outside left back, everyone has their position.
Sure.
And then at the end of the day, everybody has to play together, work together, cover each other for what is the ultimate goal is to win.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm talking to somebody and you may understand components of it, but ultimately you're not out there to win, respectfully, you're not on my team. Because every day I wake up, I put my shoes on, I put my socks on, and I'm like gearing up, ready to go to a soccer match, and I'm going there to win, right? So you know, in life you have these different times of your life, right? When you're young, you're learning, right? You're wanting to always be around people that are bigger, better than you, right? People that you can attach to, like attach to these people that you want to be around, that you want to be like, right? And then learn from that, right? And the next thing you know, you're at another level, right? And now you're potentially the guy that guys are leaning on, right? So there's this progression of being a leader, being a good teammate, being being a professional. There's all these different levels. So I think I answered it.
Can I add one example in my own life? So I'm involved in a deal that's a little different than I've been in before. It's a hotel development deal. And so I was looking into it. I was pretty sure I wanted to do it, but it had some elements that I didn't have a lot of experience in. And I thought about, okay, who's on my team? Who could I go to that could help? And I came up with two good examples that exemplifies what we're speaking about. One was an attorney who's a real estate attorney, and I was able to send him the documents and get his opinion on it. And he did charge me a reasonable rate, so it wasn't free, which I'm okay with, because he gave me some really, really great advice, because he's an expert in that field, and it was a good way for me to get a valuable second opinion. And the other one was somebody that I had only met recently, that is with CB Richard Ellis, which is one of the largest real estate companies in the country, if not the world. And I was able to send him the documents and get his opinion on it. And he went so far as to say, well, I know a little bit about this, but I know some people that know a lot more. And he went into his team to get their opinion. And so that was really valuable to me, and a good example of me using my team to help me get to an investment decision. Now, that doesn't mean the investment will work out. It's too early, but it was enough for me to feel confident and empowered to actually move forward with the deal.
Right. And that's great. You use your resources, right? And
Yes.
you're also true with yourself that, hey, I don't know this, right? So when you're in a situation where you're realistic and hey, look, these are the people I need some answers, right? And it happens all the time.
Sure.
Right? It's like, you're trying to do this development and you need to know the zoning, future land use. Hey, how is this going to work? Yada, yada, yada. You may not know the answers. So how do you go out and find those people? Well, if you're not in the game at all, it's a lot harder.
Yes. And to add to his point before, I need to be a good teammate too. And if you're a listener, you need to be part of other people's teams too, because there's occasions where Ben, the attorney I spoke with, he's called me and said, hey, I'm working on this, and it's something that's more in the realm of my financial planner expertise, and I'd be happy to help him. So it also needs to be a two-way street. But building a team, this isn't an independent project. We're all going to need help. We're all going to need teammates, and you're going to accomplish more if you have a good team around you, especially ones that complement weaknesses you may have.
And at a bigger level, and we mentioned this before, is that I don't ever look at anybody as my competitor. And this is a little bit, I tell them all the time, I'm like, that's not our competitor. That's our teammate. They could be in the same field of work with us, but I guarantee you, we have more in common. I guarantee you, there's more that we can do to help each other than it is to not. Because a lot. I mean, I don't want to say everybody, but if you're a successful person in whatever business, you get that, right? You get that's somebody that you can go have a cup of coffee with, talk business. Maybe there's relationships that he has that you have, or that he wants that you have, and he has relationships or he knows people, because in the field of work, you're always looking for people, right? You're always looking for new people. You're always looking for somebody who's good and quick to do plans. Someone, you're always looking, right? So stop thinking that's your competitor. Like, okay, yeah, you're all in this together, right? I mean, that's when you could start operating like that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you're at a whole nother level, right? You're almost in a place where you can't really. You're not. I don't want to say untouchable, but the energy that's coming out of you and the people around you is something that is gonna win. You know.
This episode is brought to you by Gold Real Estate Solutions, where real estate ends with golden sunsets. Give us a ring to discuss your greater Tampa Bay real estate needs at 813-318-1289.
And so all this is going on where you're setting the goals and you're building this team and whatnot, which leads us into now our rule number 5, which is like tracking your progress.
Yes.
So what is the importance of this rule of tracking your progress throughout?
Yeah. Some of this we already talked about with the net worth statement, because net worth statement is a key ingredient of keeping track. I use the word, it's your score sheet. And so that's part of tracking your progress. A lot of people are intimidated by financial statements, money, and unfortunately, too many people will bury their head in their sands, but you want to track your progress. So as an example, let's say you've built up and you have 4 properties. You want to have some documents that you either prepare, or you could have your accountant, bookkeeper, someone else prepare for you. But a balance sheet is a good idea. Is, what is the asset? What is the debt? Cash flow. Keep track of the cash flow. If it's an income producing property, how much income do you have coming out? How much expenses do you have with the property? You want to know how profitable or unprofitable the property is. So you want to track your progress by keeping a series of financial statements. I know that sounds incredibly scary. It is not, but you want to have a net worth statement. You want to have an idea of cash flow for both your household as well as your investment properties. You want to have a profit and loss statement or a P&L statement for your real estate endeavors. So I have multiple properties. I know how much money I make from those properties, how much revenue is generated, what the expenses are, what the debt situation is, if any mortgages are on any of the properties. So I have a profit and loss statement for the entirety of the real estate portfolio, which if you're a real estate investor, you're probably aspiring to or already have several properties. Additionally, you want to have a profit and loss statement for each individual property. So if you have 4 properties, you want to have a P&L, profit and loss statement for the whole portfolio, but then each individual property, so that you're certain that you don't have 3 good properties and 1 stinker, but you don't realize how bad the stinker is because you're only looking at the one that includes all 4. So you want to break that down. So net worth statement, cash flow statement, profit and loss for your properties as a group, as also individual. If you haven't done this, it might sound intimidating, but again, it's not that bad. There's QuickBooks, there's accounting software, accountants can help you with this. You guys could probably even help anyone that's interested in this. It's not so bad to set up, a little work, but not so bad. And then maintenance of this is not bad at all. But the value creation is incredibly important because you'll be able to track how you're doing and allow you to make better, more fully informed decisions to help you get successful that much faster and get you to be a wealthier real estate investor.
You were talking earlier about this game we're playing,
Yeah.
right? And if you're playing basketball with a higher scoring game, you could be thinking you're hitting every single 3 and you're like, look at my score. I've scored 70 points. Meanwhile, the other team just scored 120 and you're actually losing. Is that where is that analogy fair with a profit and loss statement?
It is fair to a point, because I'll dovetail that with what Gold says, is that it is a game, but you're mostly playing a game against yourself. I don't think I ever myself or counseled others like you have to do better than Gold, you have to do better than that person. But comparatively, having an idea, if you have a property that's cash flowing, a cash on cash return of 4%, it'd be decent to know if there are lots of other people around you that are doing 7.
Sure.
Not because you want to beat them necessarily, but it then identifies that you are not optimizing your business. Either your expenses are too high, or your income is too low, or maybe a combination. Maybe it's the wrong property. Maybe you need some help from teammates to identify what's going on. So I think to a certain point, the gamification is very helpful, but not in a competitive sense that you're necessarily trying to beat the next person. Now, there might be viewers that are anxious to make more money and be wealthier than their brother-in-law or something like that. But generally speaking, I think it's you're trying to improve yourself and you're competing against yourself. Having an awareness of what's going on around you in the space, that part of keeping score is really valuable. But hopefully you could get to 120, and then everybody could get in your sphere of influence could get from 120 to 130 together. That's fun.
Yeah, hands down. It's also fascinating as we talk about like cap rates, for instance. I'm sure you've seen how investments, especially in real estate, a cap rate of like 12% used to be the norm, where all of a sudden the market shifts. Now, if you're only making 4% on a cap rate, you're like, that's actually pretty good in this market, right? But if you're not seeing what's going on around you, you don't know.
Yes.
Which kind of leads us into like rule number 6, which is the utilization and the power of diversification.
Yes. So I think that word had come up earlier in the discussion. Now, this is a little tricky because if you're listening to this, watching this, and you don't have any properties and you're really starting out and you're young and maybe haven't built wealth, or maybe even older and had some obstacles thrown your way, you might be starting from scratch. But I'm a big believer in diversification. In other words, I don't really want to go into any investment deal where I use the term blow myself up, where I'm going to reset back to zero. I don't want to do anything that's going to take so much risk where it could do significant harm to my wealth and my financial security. And the way that you do that is being diversified. I don't have all my money in one property. I have several properties. And I don't have all my money in real estate, one type of real estate. I have multiple types of real estate. And I don't only have my money in real estate, I have money in retirement accounts, college funds, bank accounts, and other assets. So being diversified is really important because you can create shock absorbers in your wealth building plan such that if something is struggling, it doesn't drag you all the way down, because there's likely to be something else in the mix that is thriving at that point. And the reality is, if you do this over time, things that are struggling now will be doing wonderfully well later, and things that are doing wonderfully now, you might really dislike later on because it's struggling. But it allows for a journey where it's more like a grinding upward slope, as opposed to big ups and downs. If you go into a real estate deal and it works out great, that's wonderful. But if it works out really bad, you don't want it to become a financial disaster where you're putting risk on yourself that is difficult to cope with. That's stressful. It could cause relational problems with a spouse. And when you go to zero, if you have such a big problem where you reset back to almost starting point, restarting takes a lot more energy than maintaining. So you want to be diversified. Now, when you're younger, you do often take more risks because you only have limited resources available. So concentration at younger ages is a little more to be expected. But as you go on your journey, you want to diversify more and more such that you could withstand problems. None of these things work all the time. Nobody is flawless. This is not an exact science. So when things go bad with a certain amount of investment, if you have other things that are working for you, it makes it easier to make good decisions on what to deal with the bad investment. So with this hotel deal that I mentioned, this is my second most recent significant investment I've made. I hope it does well. I'm optimistic. I did my homework. I did all these wealth building rules. And so I'm expecting to be successful. But if it's not, it won't be ruinous to me, my wife, and my family.
Sure. And Gold, like you've built what I would call like your gold empire, right? In a lot of different ways. You've got Roomster, you've got the roofing, you've got the GC work, now development. Can you talk about how you diversified your business to Chris's point, as something was probably performing really well, maybe isn't anymore, versus others that aren't doing so well have kind of blossomed.
Yeah, so I agree with everything Chris says. I will mention that. I will mention that one of the things about diversification with real estate and with having money in funds and stuff is that obviously money in real estate's not liquid. Money in the stock market funds is liquid.
Yeah.
So you're able to touch it.
Great point.
The other piece of the puzzle is that real estate, you can't measure equity of real estate. You can measure it if you do your statement, right? You can go off of Zillow, whatever, but you have equity, building equity in real estate, which is a whole nother category of your return on investment, right? It's almost like it's not really an part of the equation. It's, if you look at the shell and say I paid this for it, it cost me this is what I'm profiting, you can look at that and say okay, but then outside of that there's what else is going on outside of that property, like what's going on in the area, right? Like are you that specific to buy that house because of those numbers, or do you see a bigger picture out there that's going to make you way more money? And do you potentially not care what that shell is making you because you see what the big picture is, right? But the basics of real estate and investing, you have to start there because that piece has to at least break even, right? So necessarily your return on investment, from the specific side may not be that important. So those are things to consider, right? And that's part of why diversification is good, because if you need money, you can pull it out of the stock market. You have dividend money or whatever. You can call your broker and say, hey, I need some money. Real estate, good luck, refinance, maybe, I don't know, but it's hard to get money out of there. But it's also a good prison to be in because for me, I was in prison for 15 years of these properties or more, right? And you don't touch them, and next thing you know, you're in a really nice place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's a fight, it's I don't want to say a fight, but it's a uphill battle. It's an uphill jog with some weight on your back.
Yeah, it's like your net worth statement all of a sudden looks really good all of a sudden when you have 15 properties on that balance sheet and 14 of them don't have a mortgage.
At Gold Roofs, our team is here to guide you through every step of the roofing process. From your first call to the final inspection, your project will be smooth, professional, and stress-free, bringing you the gold standard in service and quality. Call us today at 813-600-5308 or visit goldroofs.com.
So you have that piece of it, right? And not to like mix this whole thing up, but you also have to figure out how to take risks to have the money to make things happen, right? Because if you're so specific on everything, then you may put yourself in a situation where you're not really going to take the right risks. Like I've had properties and I own tons of them, God bless, that my best use for that property is not being used right now. So for me to sit here and be so tied up in how much that property is producing, obviously I care and it needs to pay for itself at least. But I already know what you see what's back there. But to get to that property, I had to go into some debt. Right. And but the key to that debt is a smart debt, right? There's a whole nother, right? What's smart debt?
We're going to get to that in a moment.
Which leads us directly into rule number 7.
And do you have enough cash flow in your business to pay for that? And what? So that's
Yeah. Which leads us directly into rule number 7: be careful with debt, right? Because debt is a tool, as I've heard you say, but it can also be quite a trap.
Yeah. On my journey, having listened and learned from a number of people, there's divergent opinions on debt. And use two examples. You have Robert Kiyosaki, who is famous for his Rich Dad Poor Dad book, which tremendously influential book. I love, meaningful to me. Don't necessarily agree with everything in the book, but he seems to me very lackadaisical about debt and doesn't speak enough about the dangers of debt. And it is a tool, and it's a tool that could work to your advantage or not. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have Dave Ramsey, who I believe has one of the most popular financial podcasts in the country. And he takes the posture that nobody should have any debt. I mean, his preference is for people to buy a home with no mortgage if they can, but no borrowing whatsoever. And I think those are two extremes for me. And I'm someplace in the middle, a little more measured. I think using debt to acquire properties makes sense. I've done it. I assume you gentlemen have done it too. That's good. It's productive. It's helpful. But I think it's something you just want to be careful about. And too much debt, being over leveraged, gets you into a situation we just talked about where you could blow yourself up. If you have too much debt and too little equity, and too little money and assets elsewhere, when something goes wrong, you can't withstand it. You just don't have the resilience in your financial situation to overcome something bad that's going to happen. It's not worth the risk. So debt is good. It's a good tool, but it should be used carefully. It should be a discriminating decision where you're careful about how much debt you have, what kind of debt you have, how you're going to pay it back, how much risk is associated with it. And so I think on your journey to become wealthy, using debt as a tool makes sense. But I find going back to like some of the seminars that you might go to or some of the talking heads on TikTok and whatnot, they're a little too like, yeah, just borrow money. Yeah, leverage. That could be a little dangerous. Again, I've used it successfully in my life, sometimes not successfully, but I did get to a point where I paid off all of my properties, all of my debt, and now I'm debt free. Now I'm 54 going on 55, so I didn't spend my whole life debt free.
Sure.
But I did get to a point financial security wise that I am debt free, which is very good. But I borrowed money to get properties, including my home as well as investment properties. And I also borrowed money to acquire other financial planning practices as I was trying to grow my business. But I think I just caution people about real estate investing becoming too over leveraged where you are in a vulnerable position. Because what you'll find for buyers of a real estate investor, I want to buy from somebody that has blown themselves up because then I'm going to get a deal because they're desperate.
Sure.
On the flip side, you do not want to be the desperate person. And often the desperate person is over leveraged and has a debt problem. Not always, but it's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned those two concepts of your personal property, which you bought with debt, but has since been paid off and has grown exponentially in value, right? And then additionally, you're saying picking up other financial advising practices, which allowed you to grow your income. I looked at it from the standpoint, even my own investment property, when I purchased that, I utilized one of my own financial buckets in order to purchase it. And because it was such a low level, it wasn't, $1 million property. It was a condo that was much less. I was able to purchase that outright, which when the market turned then, rather than being up against a hard money loan
Yes.
or a heavy interest or anything, I could then sit back and say, okay, what do I need to do with this? I could have sold it for a loss, right? Or, and discussing with gold and at the time and everything, the better avenue was to then rent it. And that's what it is right now, allowing the equation to work and not be desperate, to your point.
Yeah.
Was there a specific thing you can think in your mind where you were like, Chris, that was a terrible decision to take on that debt and not, and you're happy you walked away and learned from it?
Yeah. So
everyone loves talking about the good stuff.
yes, no, this is good. This is good. We'll end on a sadder note for Chris. So I went on a series, this is going back a bit, where we were flipping properties and we were acquiring properties, and I was financing much of the properties through my own home equity line of credit. So I had my primary residence, which didn't have much debt on it. I had a lot of equity, and I got a home equity line of credit on the property. And then I could buy investment properties for cash. The deals were cash. But I was self-financing it by drawing on the equity of my home. And I did one deal and it worked out. And then we flipped the property successfully. So it was good. But then I was emboldened. So then I did it a second. But I was starting then to buy properties without getting rid of the first one. So I ended up utilizing all of my home equity line of credit. And then there was a turn in the market. Now I had properties that I wanted to sell, but turned into rental properties. But now I had the debt on my home equity line of credit. So I had to make that work on a cash flow basis. It also had the negative effect of being a logjam because I couldn't do anything else because now I had this debt. I had gotten farther out on the debt, on the risk spectrum than I really intended to, but I kind of got a little brash and was going fast. So now I couldn't really do much. And I had these properties I didn't really want, but I couldn't sell. They turned into rentals, but I couldn't really buy anything else because I had the debt. And that was really not a good period of time. And it was stressful because that short-term debt was kind of expensive on the home equity line of credit relative to properties that really weren't designed to be rental properties. Like I didn't underwrite it as a rental property. I underwrote it as a flip. And so that was a logjam, and it took a couple of years to actually get rid of the logjam. And I remember specifically my wife Joelle and I sitting down, going through this, and then deciding to sell one of the three properties that had tied up the home equity line of credit at a loss to break the logjam. Just like we need to do something, and I ended up doing something that I had resisted doing, but I needed to break the logjam. So that was an inappropriate, poor use of debt. Started out okay, but then I got myself in a bit of a mess.
Gold smirking over there.
That brings me back to the point where you never stop figuring it out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You never stop figuring it out. You figured out, hey, you know what? I got to take an L on something.
Yes.
And that was a smart move. A, tax write-off,
Yes.
right? B, stress level away.
Yes.
So I agree with everything you said. I'm just going to bring a little more detail into it.
Yeah.
I have some rules of thumbs, right? One of my rules of thumb is that if I'm going to borrow money on something, it's not going to be for more than 50%, right? And my evaluation of 50% is going to be low, right? So that means that A, my payment's going to be lower, B, my risk factor is going to be lower, and C, whoever I'm borrowing the money from is going to feel comfortable with the deal because they see that it's not as risky, right? So that is 100% the smart move if you're going to borrow money. A, don't borrow more than you need.
Yeah.
And just borrow enough that you can afford to pay so that it works out. The other thing is that, and this has nothing to do with 30-year like regular loan. I'm talking about like hard money loans or any type of loan that is a bridge loan, any of that. You want to pay that off as quick as possible.
Yes.
So you don't want it to linger, right? So if you borrowed $150,000 to get through a deal, then, and you have a 1-year balloon, you better figure out, you better have enough money coming in to be able to pay that loan off as quick as you can. And then the other thing is that a lot of people, this is a whole nother maniac way of going at it, but if you're really in the game, you've got more than one deal going on, okay? So not only am I figuring out that deal, I'm figuring out the deal behind it, right? So I have two deals in my mind, two monetary engines that I have to synchronize to get through this. So you better have a really good game plan, right? And the game plan doesn't just come from oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do. No. This is something your brain will continue to think about until you shut it off when you sleep, how to figure out how to make this move work, right? And I'm not saying that's for everybody, and I'm not saying that you make bad decisions. You obviously have to be confident and have experience in these situations, right? And you got to have enough money coming in to know that you can handle these situations. But those situations, when you actually are able to be in those situations, those are situations that can make you go from here to here, right? And it's risk. It's risk, and it's how much you want to deal with. It's a little bit different than what risk you were in, because even though you were risk, you had it very controlled, and you knew what you knew exactly what was going on, right? It was just bad time in the market, and the rental part of you're right, because when you do the rehab and you buy that property, it's a flip. Now, God bless, you can rent it, even though it wasn't a rental, so you could still get some money, but you still got to deal with it. And who knows who you put in there? There may not be good tenants. There's a whole bunch of stuff in regards to that. So you got to be able to make moves. But when it comes to the money, don't borrow money. Don't borrow more money than you need to. Borrow as less as you can. Pay it off as quick as you can, and you're mitigating your potential. Being like this.
Well said.
So ultimately, Chris, you've gone through life. You've seen the ups and downs, the turns, everything. You've set this 7-part framework, and I'm just gonna read this. Rule number 1, set clear goals. Rule number 2, preparation is key. Rule number 3, develop a wealth building plan. Rule number 4, build the right team. Rule number 5, track your progress. Rule number 6, utilize the power of diversification. And rule number 7, be careful with debt. By following this 7-step, framework, we could all be retired by 54 going on 55.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's I know you're joking to a certain extent, but I would phrase it, being serious for a moment, that we're all on a journey, and I think by adhering to these 7 rules, if you want to be a real estate investor, especially, by adhering to these rules, you'll get to where you want to go faster, have it be a little easier along the way, and avoid some pitfalls. These are not goals like, Gold was saying how driven he was. You could ignore these, and if you're just so driven, you'll probably be successful, because hard work and perseverance count for an awful lot. The question is how's it going to be on the journey? And by following these rules, I think the motivated, hardworking, industrial, entrepreneurial person, this will help them get to where you want to go and have it just be an easier ride and avoid some mistakes on the way.
Beautiful. Chris, thank you so much for this.
This was fun.
Had a blast today. Gold had a blast today.
Hey, I really enjoyed this.
Yes.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Really, really wonderful episode. Is there like a name for the 7? Is there did you come up with a name? If not, then we'll come up with a name for it.
No, there is no name. I coined 7 wealth building rules for real estate investors, not very marketing friendly.
No, it's a very long
with.
title. It's what we call a working title in the industry. Yeah, for sure.
We're going to come up with a name for it.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Good.
And we'll have you maybe on another time.
Yeah, I would love to come back.
To explore some other things. But again, man, really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all took a little bit away from it as well. Those 7 steps to building wealth. I'm Rich Miller. I'm your host for Built with Solid Gold. We'll see you next time.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of Osaic Wealth, Inc., and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of information provided at these websites. Nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to or your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA, SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management Services, LLC, not affiliated with Osaic Wealth, Inc.